Pittsburgh is neither livable nor affordable for low and moderate income families. According to the Housing Allowance of Pennsylvania's Building Inclusive Communities Study, there is a severe shortage of housing units that are both available and affordable. This shortage amounts to over 21,580 housing units that Pittsburgh doesn't have right now. It's time to prioritize low and moderate income residents in the city of Pittsburgh. In the new Pittsburgh, every worker deserves a living wage, and every family deserves a clean, decent, affordable, and safe place to call home. That's why today I'm introducing a City for All agenda, making Pittsburgh a livable and affordable city for everyone, including affordable housing for all, living wage jobs for all, neighborhood safety for all, and good schools for all. Of course, income and housing are key determinants of affordability. The Penn Plaza apartment crisis is an example of the lack of affordable and available housing in the city of Pittsburgh. To the credit of Mayor Peduto and his administration, they, along with State Representative Ed Gainey, Penn Plaza residents, and the Gumbirds, Penn Plaza's owners, have reached a historic landmark agreement to monetarily assist with the residents' relocation and provide new resources and commitments to build future low-income housing. This agreement and negotiating process that led to this is an example of the public-private partnership needed to address the issue of affordable housing. Today's legislation builds upon the success and framework and process of that agreement. Today, along with Councilman Lavelle, I introduce 4 significant pieces of legislation aimed at making Pittsburgh a city for all. I welcome everyone, the mayor, members of council, community groups, businesses, and residents to all work together in public-private partnerships to address the livability and affordability of our city. We must make sure that as our city grows, low and moderate income families are held harmless. In addition to this agenda, I am pleased to be joined by my partners who will work to make elements of this initiative practical and concrete. They include East Liberty Development Incorporated, the Pittsburgh Reinvestment Group, the Services Employee International Union, the Keel Group, members of the Homewood Community Development Collaborative, the East Hills Consensus Group, Nabi Christian Ministries, Lincoln Leamington Consensus Group, and other concerned citizens. To begin this A City for All conversation, today I will be introducing 4 pieces of legislation. First, Source of Income Anti-Discrimination Ordinance. This legislation amends the city fair housing law to include source of income as a protected class, which will prohibit discrimination based on income. In many housing markets, one of the key ways housing is provided to low-income tenants is through a housing subsidy, such as the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Voucher holders often face blatant discrimination when searching for housing. Source of income discrimination makes it increasingly difficult for voucher recipients to actually use their vouchers. Second, affordable housing impact statements. Affordable housing impact statement requires developers to file a statement detailing the impact of major development upon affordable housing. An estimated 8,000 to 12,000 new housing units are proposed to be built in the city of Pittsburgh, none of which will be affordable for low-income families. The city needs a mechanism to track the impact of these developments upon the creation or the preservation of affordable housing. Third, the Wage Review Committee will commission a study examines the substantial number of low-income workers employed in our city's anchor institutions and industries. These hard-working employees who work full-time, but many still need public subsidies to subsidize their low wages. The committee will develop a report that will be submitted back to council. Last but not least, the HELP, Homewood, East Hills, East Liberty, Larmer, Lincoln Leamington Balmar Protection Initiative will bring together both public and private partners to develop an East End multi-neighborhood affordable housing protection strategy that will capitalize on the strengths and opportunities of the East End market. With these 4 pieces of legislation, building upon the landmark Penn Plaza Agreement, we begin the process of making Pittsburgh a city for all. I'm glad to be joined with me by my friends. We're going to ask that a few people come to speak. First of all, Councilman Daniel Lavelle. Following that, from the Pittsburgh Community Reinvestment Group, Majestic Lane. Following that, from the SAIU Healthcare, Serena Coates. Following that, East Liberty Development Incorporated, Marilyn Byers. And then finally, a community resident and community spokesman from the Community Empowerment Association, Richard Birdsong. In that order, first, Councilman Lavelle, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm very pleased to stand here today with Reverend Burgess as well as these fine individuals from the community. Reverend Burgess's comments were very comprehensive, so I just want to make two important points. One, and Reverend Burgess mentioned this as well, that our city continues to get a ton of accolades and be considered the most livable. We continue to see wonderful developments happening in the East End, happening downtown, and across our city. But those developments cannot happen at the expense of low to moderate income neighborhoods. Those developments cannot happen at the expense of those who are already here, of those who already only make an average income in the city of Pittsburgh of approximately $34,000. We have to make sure that those individuals and those communities grow, not at the same rate as the wonderful developments that are happening, but more expeditiously. We have to be very serious and targeted in our efforts, which brings me to my second point. This agenda cannot be done on the cheap. This is going to cost. And my colleagues, Reverend Burgess, myself, our additional colleagues on council, and the administration are going to have to prioritize this effort. I've said since the first day I came to council that if we have 10 communities and $10, we can no longer afford to give each community $1 because for so many years, a number of those communities were not getting their entire dollar. They were getting 50%, 25 cents, maybe 75 cents at the best. We've now got to be very intentional and say we have to give these underserved neighborhoods $2 of those $10. We have to give them additional resources to catch up because unfortunately in many respects, in many parts of our city, we've already fallen behind. So with that being said, I would now like to bring up Mr. Lane to speak.
So thank you to Councilman Burgess and Councilman Lavelle for continuing to expand the conversation about an issue that is vital to the future of our great city. As PCRG, we support the concept of the expansion of the discussion and what it means for our neighborhoods. As many of you know, PCRG is a membership organization made up of groups from all over the region. So our members are having conversations on the ground and knowing what's happening about, affordable housing and low to moderate income displacement. We feel the pressures and know how important it is to preserve the fabric and the character of this great region that so many of us know and love. There are many things our members are doing all across the region to maintain and expand low to moderate income housing and affordable housing, so it's great to see this conversation elevated by elected officials. We know that this is only the beginning of the dialogue needed to make systemic change. So as the conversation grows, we look to include the voices of all of those who have been working for decades to make Pittsburgh a safe, healthy, and equitable city. We know that there will be a strong community engagement component of this process that will enable us to put all hands together to make sure that Pittsburgh is truly a livable city for all of its residents. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Reverend Burgess, for highlighting a problem that so many service workers have been talking about: how to make the city one where all Pittsburghers can thrive. Service workers are proud of our city, and we see all the new things that are happening here, but it can sometimes seem like the city is leaving many behind. As a full-time healthcare worker at one of Pittsburgh's anchor institutions, I take home just $17,400 a year. That's less than $350 a week. That means often having to decide between food, rent, and gas. There are thousands and thousands of workers just like myself. Pittsburgh is changing, and in some ways it's getting more difficult. Rents are going up, and some service workers have had to relocate from the neighborhoods they grew up in and move outside of the city because they can't afford to live here anymore. Service workers like me exemplify all of the values that made Pittsburgh great. We work hard, we look after our families, we strive to get ahead. We do the work that keeps our anchor institutions going. We're good neighbors. A city for all means having communities in which we can all afford to live and jobs that can sustain families. We look forward to working with Reverend Burgess on this important agenda so that everyone who helps to make Pittsburgh thrive can thrive themselves. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Maylee Myers from EODI. I'm so very, very happy to be here. I cannot say this is a long time coming. I am just so honored and grateful to have such a city council, our mayor. I want to commend Reverend Burgess, also Reverend Lavelle, for all his help with this initiative. We do, in fact, have a lot of work to do. This is just the beginning of a serious conversation. I think what intrigued me in these documents is the mere fact, not just the wages, that's very, very important to housing, but also to hold the residents harmless, no matter what developments come into our communities. We have to be mindful, and there's nothing wrong with rebuilding communities, but we have to be sure that we're standing by the families who cannot speak for themselves or do for themselves. We have to be the voice. We have to not just do what we say, we have to deliver. This is wonderful, but it doesn't mean anything if it's on a piece of paper. We all have to come together, work together, and I'm very, very pleased that this initiative in the East End is going to be a realization, because we take this very, very seriously. I'm very proud, and I want to speak on behalf of the Penn Plaza families. That was a painful time. It was a wake-up call. And it's not just here in the city of Pittsburgh, it's across this country. Affordable housing is very, very important. Crime, abandonment, vacancies, rot. We have to get in front of this because the housing stock is here, but it's being depleted. We have to get together, come together with a strategy. And we're talking about all our partners. We all have to come together, our cities, our bank partners, the communities. All of us have to come together as one voice to take this on, and we have to be serious about this. It's going to be a lot of work, organizing, and what's important is to educate families about what does this mean. What does it mean about unification? What does it mean about displacement? Why am I being displaced? What does this mean to me? And then we're going to do to stop this or get in front of this to ensure the comfort level when they wake up. When they hear the word, we're coming to homes like Homewood, Larimer, Lincoln Leamington, East Hills. That's a frightful thing when you've been there, dealing with crime, dealing with rot, and wondering what's going to happen to me next. East Liberty was an example. I want to say lessons learned. We've done a tremendous job turning around that market. East Liberty used to be the third largest downtown. But it's meant to be enjoyed by all of us, all of us. It doesn't matter if we're building nice. I don't want to talk about apartments. I'm talking about amenities, restaurants, stores, and shops. If they can't enjoy them, they can't come there and have a meal, they can't walk down the streets to safe parks. It's about all of us working together. And we're talking about not just the homeless, the poor, up to the very top. It's about all of us working together to protect those who cannot. I'm talking about the homeless, I am talking about the seniors and the disabled, and not to mention our veterans. So I'm all in, and I'm very happy to be here talking about the HELP initiative for the East End of Pittsburgh, and I stand ready to support my colleagues in this very fine day. Thank you very much for listening.
My name is Rashad Birdsong from Community Empowerment Association, and I also represent the Homewood Community Development Collaboration. We support this legislation that Reverend Burgess and Councilman Lavelle is submitting, but also we got to take into consideration that Pittsburgh has some deep-seated, systemic social issues that have to be taken into consideration also. It's easy to pass legislation, but then it comes down to policy implementation. For the last 5 years, there have been several reports about particularly these type of neighborhoods. They on low social indicators of everything: housing, employment, violence, education. They go on and on and on and on. We have to have a comprehensive, holistic strategy to bring people together, the private sector, the public sector, the community, and most of all the community, because unfortunately things like this is divorced and disengaged from our community. We need to make sure that people on the ground that's feeling the impact of years of neglect, blighted communities, unemployment, overemployment, and also violence in our communities. Since 2005, we have close to 1,500 African-American men, boys, and children who have been shot or killed through violence in this city. So when we begin to talk about legislation, we got to look at some of the deep-seated historical roots that have spawned the behavior that we see in our community. And we have to get on the ground and make sure we push it, and also it got to be monitored. Implementation, because we have supported policies similar to this for years, but unfortunately there was no complete buy-in. So hopefully, this is going to happen. It's something that's long needed, and particularly in the areas that we're talking about, because that's where the concentrated poverty is. That's where, pockets of violence is. That's where the homelessness is. So we support this here, and we want to thank Reverend Burgess and Councilman Lavelle for being progressive and forward-thinking in this bill. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank all of the partners for coming out this morning and making a special show to show that we are united. If there's any quick questions I can answer, or any of the members who are here can answer, we're open for just a few questions. If not, thank you very much for coming, and we will continue this conversation.